Welcome to Insights from Getting Undressed with speaker, author, and coach, David Cooks.
I'm David Cooks, and welcome to Insights from Getting Undressed, where we get to speak to the readers from across the country and get their insights from reading my book, Getting Undressed from Paralysis to Purpose. Our guest today is Clara Green from Atlanta, Georgia. Clara, welcome to the program.
Thank you, David. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Well, we're looking forward to talking to you today. But before we get started, why don't you share a little bit with the audience about yourself, some of the things you do, and then we'll get into our questions.
Sure. So I am a diversity and inclusion practitioner. I currently work for Regions Bank. I have the good fortune of building their strategy and programming around diversity and inclusion. I have an incredible team that supports my efforts. And we've had a wonderful opportunity to get to know David Cooks better.
Well, thank you. I did spend some time. Was it last fall? Last fall.
It was last fall.
It seemed like it was so long ago. And what a great time. What a great time. And one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is you were very passionate about the book and having read it. And I said, you know what? During this time where we're quarantining and doing all those types of things, it'd be nice to have some stories from some other people and talk about the book and what it means to them. So we're grateful that you're here too.
Oh, thank you for the invitation.
All right. All of our guests get the same 3 questions. All right. So we'll get started. The very first question, or the first question is, what story in the book did you relate to the most and why?
Yeah. Well, first, let me say it was hard to narrow it down to just one. But I think for me, it was the story that you told about going into the rehabilitation facility after your initial diagnosis and your roommate being Tony Otters. And that story is such an incredible story. So Tony had been there probably, I think, a few weeks before you got there and had suffered a pretty significant injury that left him as a quadriplegic. And Tony was one who had big dreams. And you came to realize very quickly in your time being around him that his dreams were in no way dampened by his current situation. And you talk about how the two of you pushed and encouraged each other through the rehabilitation process. And I think for me, it resonated so well. You know, you talked a little bit about how even in that situation, you could see God's grace shining through, because we all know that in many of those situations, we don't get to determine who we're paired up with, right?
Right.
And for God to give you that good fortune to put you in such close proximity to someone like Tony, who was already in the mindset that he was going to conquer this situation. It was not going to get the best of him. He was still going to live out his dreams, had tremendous impact on your mindset. And it really helped you begin to shape the rest of your life and to really shift your perspective, which I'll talk more about because that's my response to another question. But it was just a great reminder to me of how we have to choose our company carefully, right? Like I said, sometimes we can't always have that good fortune of doing it. But when we can, we need to make sure that we're surrounding ourselves with people that are of like mind and people that can encourage and lift our spirits and continue to point us in the right direction. So that was probably my greatest takeaway.
Okay. Well, it's interesting. I'm a big believer in the fact that you don't have to make the journey by yourself, and that you can have some people to join you and help you and assist you to get from your paralysis to purpose. And Tony definitely did that for me. The second question, what are your key takeaways from the book?
So I'm going to talk about that and also kind of answer the next question as well, because I want to tell you my favorite quote from the book.
Okay.
And then it'll shape better the key takeaways. And for me, it was, kind of the framing that you had for, tell you exactly, chapter 2 on perspective.
Okay.
And it's all about how you see it will determine how you attack it. And I paraphrased a little bit there, but that was kind of my favorite quote. And I think it's something that in the back of your mind you think about,
Mm-hmm.
and you should do, but sometimes we get lost.
Yeah.
And for me, it was just that whole, repositioning that to the very beginning of your book, which I think shaped the way that you told your story throughout the book. So all of my takeaways really center around how, as you were telling your stories and you continue to build and shape your life, and the experiences that you had all centered around your perspective. Mm-hmm. And mindfulness, and how you chose to view each and every situation. So it was never the woe is me. It was never the I can't do this because. It was really, I'm going to do this. I just have to figure out how. And that was, to me, kind of the takeaways. And that theme carried itself throughout. And that's why the power of your book is so strong, because it really does help us all understand that regardless of the stumbling blocks that we have, mm-hmm. and some of those stumbling blocks are bigger than others, we still have to reframe our thinking. And we always have to come at it from the angle of, I can still do this. This is still possible. I am more than a conqueror. And I just love that. So I love the fact that that's the thread that I saw throughout the book in each and every one of your stories. And I still carry it with me. Wow. Very much today.
Well, thank you. I mean, that was a real powerful explanation of takeaways and the quote and how you tied that together. So that's really great. Before we sign off today, we're gonna let you freestyle. That's what we call it.
Okay.
Give you an opportunity just to share anything that you want the listeners from around the world to know about this book, and then we'll just come back and close it out.
Sure. One of the good things that I get to do in my role is to talk with different people about inclusion. So my team and I made a very conscious effort last year to focus on inclusion and to have conversations with different demographics and communities across our organization, really in an effort of knitting together stories and to build this strong foundation of inclusion. So as I read David's book, I was like, I got to get him to the bank. And, it was October. It was Disability Awareness Month. We put out the communication that we were going to have this conversation. And I think that people were hesitant because no one wanted to come in and face into the reality of what could be mm-hmm. their lives at any point, or the fact that in some way they had been able to sidestep certain conditions that might have left them in a similar situation, or in other ways not really fully being able to live their lives. So I think that there was just some hesitancy, but we were able to pack the room. David came in, and boy, I tell you, you lifted the spirits of everyone in that room. And I still get a little emotional when I think about it, because I actually got emotional during the conversation, which never happens. And for me, it was just seeing so many people relate to what you were saying, and to just marvel in the fact that you had not let any of the obstacles that you had faced, and you'd faced obstacles even beyond your initial paralysis diagnosis, up to the point that you were actually coming to talk with us. But you overcame each and every one of those challenges. And so it turned very much into this motivational conversation, this shot in the arm that I feel like everyone needed. You spoke to so many situations that day, and you touched so many hearts with your story and with your candor, with your humor, with your perspective on life. And I still to this day get stopped and asked about how you're doing, and how much that conversation really meant to them. And, I just think if you've not read this book, please read the book. It is one of the best motivational pieces of work I've ever read. And I just appreciated the opportunity to dig into the story deeper with you, David, and to have the opportunity to help you share your story. Because, even though we think, that doesn't apply to me today, you never know what the future holds. And so it's always good to have some foundational grounding around certain concepts and principles, such as perspective, that we can lean into if we ever need it.
Yeah, it's interesting the time that we're in now, where we are all limited with what we're able to do. We don't have the ability right now to do what we normally do. So in a very different way, we all have become one.
Right.
And have a better understanding of limitations that people with disabilities or other issues may actually have. We are all experiencing that now. And I hopefully we'll be a better people because of that. So
that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I think you helped us start this conversation on mindfulness. I had a conversation yesterday that we're continuing around mindfulness and how do we begin to shape our thinking more in a positive frame, and how do we focus on today and not worry so much about tomorrow.
Yeah.
And so again, I think that your book and the conversations that I've had with you have really helped shape that way of thinking for a lot of people who really didn't know how to do that, or may have known but had forgotten what an important lesson it is.
Well, thank you so much for being with us today, Clara.
Thank you, David.
It's just outstanding to spend time with you today. And we'll have more insights from Getting Undressed next time. Remember, whatever life throws your way, your ability to endure it is greater than your willingness to endure it.
You can order a copy of Getting Undressed from Paralysis to Purpose at davidcookspeaks.com or on amazon.com. Special thanks to Clara Green for sharing her insights from Getting Undressed.